pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have everyone here but Councilman Doyle. He is absent tonight. Open Meetings Act is posted in this room up on the wall. And the first item we will tackle is consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the City Council, will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests. Item A, approve agenda as submitted. Item B, receive and place on file all notices pertaining to this meeting. Item C, receive and place on file all materials having any bearing on this meeting. Item D, approval of minutes of the regular meeting on February 2nd, 2026, as on file in the City Clerk's office. Item E, approval of Treasurer Report of Claims in the amount of $1,168,419.55. Approval of Boswell Report of Claims in the amount of $53,819.85. Approval of BPW Report of Claims in the amount of $676,504.82. Item H, Resolution Number 7722, executing Amendment Number 5 to the Lottery Operator Agreement with EHPV Lottery Services, LLC, doing business as Big Red Keno, to extend the Lottery Operator Agreement to expire on February 28, 2031. Resolution Number 7723, granting permission to Kevin Kramer, doing business as Papa's Campbell's, permission to sell or offer for sale or peddle goods, wares, or merchandise at Chautauqua Park and the skate park periodically between May 1st, 2026 and terminating on October 31st, 2026 for camel rides and a petting zoo. Item J, Resolution Number 7724, granting permission to Blue Valley Indivisible and their designees permission to sell or offer for sale or peddle goods, wares, or merchandise at Charles Park on March 28, 2026, between the hours of 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. as part of their Rally Festival. Item K, Resolution Number 7725, appointing Amber Templemeyer to the City Beatrice Library Advisory Board. And item L, Resolution Number 7726, executing any and all contracts or documents between the city and the Nebraska Department of Economic Development regarding the Planning Opportunity CDBG Grant 25-PP-001 to update the city's comprehensive plan. Anybody need anything pulled off?
One item, L. I don't need it pulled off, I just need to.
Okay,
I got a
fire
question.
away.
How long does that take?
The comprehensive plan,
From, we're starting to do it now, how long, when will it be done?
I would assume the grant will probably be for 18 months.
Okay.
I figure the study itself will probably take you close to around a year.
Okay. That's it, that's all I had, thanks.
Mr. McLean.
I move the items listed on the consent agenda be approved, accepted, and ratified as presented.
Second.
All right, your vote, please. And that passes 7-0. Okay, we're going to move into discussion reports first. This one is on the proposed electrical generation facility presentation. We have Mr. Krajewski here with us, JK Energy Consulting Incorporated, here with us tonight. You do want to say a few words first?
No, I think everybody kind of knows why we're here. We've been in the process of doing a study on looking at the possibility of building an electric generation facility outside of town here, or I'd say inside our city limits. And so we did the siting study, and we've been working with HDR on some different types of engines and doing some due diligence there. And now we're ready for John to come back, talk to us a little bit about where we're at and what our kind of next steps are.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Again, my name is John Krajewski. I was here a few months ago talking about your electric rates, and we've been working on this generation study with HDR and the city for a few months. Just give you a little bit of background. About a year ago, we'd worked with Burns & McDonnell on a study to look at that potential site. We looked at a single generator, probably in the 50 megawatt range, possibly three smaller units. But at that time, market conditions were a little different than they are right now. What we've seen is, if you read the news, data centers and large load growth, and that's put some pressure on the generation market. I'll say that Burns & McDonnell is very busy with a lot of larger projects. This one probably is not they're of interest to them because they're building projects that are 10 times bigger than this. So we're working with HDR. We retained them. The city retained them last, I'm trying to think my time frame here, about August, I think it was. July, August, to update the numbers in the Burns-McDonnell study, look at some specific issues, particularly related to gas supply, and then update the market estimates on the purchased equipment price. This project, as we envision it right now, would serve not only the city's capacity needs, but also those of some partners that have expressed some strong interest in participating in this. The site you have there is very good. It's got great gas access. It has good transmission access. It's on city-owned land. It's not next to a school. It's not next to a park. It's 5 miles from the Homestead Monument. You can't see it from there. I looked when I drove over here this afternoon. So it's a good site. And when we did the study work with Burns-McDonnell, we looked at that site first, and then we started looking at others, and why are we looking at these sites? Because they're just clearly not workable, just based on gas access, transmission, all those things. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So because it's such a good site, there are other folks that are interested in participating in the project. So I'm a mechanical engineer by training, but I've done a lot of electrical work. And so sometimes I'll use terms like a RICE unit or a combustion turbine just because that's what I learned in college. So the two technologies we looked at, the first is what's called a reciprocating internal combustion engine. They're called RICE units. They're typically fueled on either fuel oil, like diesel, or natural gas with a little bit of diesel included in there to provide the spark. So think of an 18-wheeler, take that capacity, make it about 10 to 20 times bigger. That would be one technology. It's a very reliable option. They've been around for 100 years. The technology is improved in terms of emissions. You don't have to worry about things of that nature. They're also they're very fast start. In the market we're in right now with SPP, there's a lot of wind, there's a lot of solar. Weather front comes through, the wind goes down, so SPP needs peaking generation, stuff that can respond quickly. These are the types of units that get dispatched regularly and provide good backup or good hedge for your energy supply needs compared to just being on the market. The other option we're looking at is a combustion turbine, jet engine. Basically, it's a jet engine with a generator attached to the back end of it. I'll say if you think about a 747, it's got 4 of those engines on it. That's about a 45 megawatt combustion turbine. We're looking at something in the 50 to 55 range, so it's going to be about that big. That gives you a sense of the scale we're looking at. So I'd say the one thing, there's 2 benefits. You need the capacity. You have capacity contracts expiring at the end of 2030, which is not that far away when you're talking about projects like this. And you also have your energy supply agreements with AEP expire in that same general time frame. These units can provide you a nice energy hedge. When I say that, you may not run them all the time. So when the market prices are low, which is probably lower than the cost of these things about 75% of the time, you buy from the market. Prices go up, start the units. If they go really high, you start the units and sell the excess in the market and make a little money. That's not really how we analyze this. We just looked at what your needs were on this. So I'm going to show a couple of charts here later on, but adding economy of scale, making a larger project really brings the capacity cost down. Estimate if you go from the 50 megawatt project we looked at last year to a 200 megawatt project, you're looking at 15 to 20% savings on the cost per kilowatt, and that's important. That saves your customers money, it saves the other partners money, and gets you a lot of better interest from I'll say vendors, from contractors that'll be bidding on this project. I already talked about the HDR study a little bit, so I won't go through that. But one thing I did want to highlight is they did a lot better job, I think, of outlining the permitting needs and looking at emissions. Power plant projects tend to, environmental permits are one of the bigger limiting factors, or I'll say one of the critical factors in putting these projects together. So they did some estimating of how much we could run under different scenarios, different types of permitting. And I thought they did a very good job of giving us a range of options there that we'll use as we go forward and select the vendor for these projects. So if we look at here, as I mentioned earlier, getting to an economy of scale helps you quite a bit. If we look at, these are the RICE units, the diesel engines. If you're at a 100 megawatt project, you're about $2,500 a kW. That's, for a 100 megawatt project, basically that's $250 million, give or take. Pocket change. I probably have that in the couch cushions at all your houses. So these costs are probably 15% higher than they were when we did the Burns and McDonnell study. And again, that's just supply and demand. You weren't ready at that time, I would say, to move forward. I think there were some things that we needed to clear up with regard to potential participants and gas supply that we've answered those questions now. So now if we look at the combustion turbines, there are several different options. And again, these are 50 megawatt units, so single units. When I talk about the cases, one is with an SCR, that's selective catalytic reduction. Think the catalytic converter in your car. That helps you bring your emissions down, gives you more operating flexibility. It comes at a cost. You're talking 20% of the cost of the project. So most likely, if we go with the combustion turbine project, we will most likely not put the SCRs in and agree to an operating limitation that will only run so many hours on gas and so many hours on oil. Hours that would, and those hours would reflect what we think the units would run anyway. So again, we're still we're going to get bids on both probably, make a decision at that point, which gives you the better operating flexibility and which gives you more hours of operation. So again, if you look at the like the 2A, 2B, and 2C, you can see there's about a 10% reduction in the capital cost when you go from the 100 megawatt project to the 200 megawatt project. And again, these are probably comparable to what we were seeing when we did the Burns and McDonnell study, probably a little bit higher if we were just looking at a single unit. So anybody have any questions so far? I'm going to get into some.
I have one.
Yes.
So the cost goes down as you go from 100.
Okay, could you speak?
I can.
Okay.
I have the same problem.
Yeah,
I thank you for saying something.
Yep.
The cost goes down when you go from 50 to 100 to 200 watt.
Right.
So does that continue to go down if you get bigger to 600, say 600?
It's a curve like this. It starts to level out as you add more units because you still, and eventually you run out of room at the site. So I would say that you probably get the most bang for your buck in terms of economy of scale, going from 50 to probably 200 to 250, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And the 200 number is probably based as much on interest from others. And you get up too big, you're going to be starting to look at additional transmission line expansion that you'll have to look at. So you want to kind of rely on the capacity that's there in the 115 line, the load the city has, and try not to trigger a big improvement on the transmission grid.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So really what we're looking at is a point of diminishing return.
I'm sorry?
A point of diminishing return.
Yes. That's exactly, you said it much better than me. Thank you. That's why you're sitting in the
I'm
important chair and, and I'm sitting out here. So if we go to the next slide, please. So I've talked a lot about this. I will say that the RICE units, they would come with emission control equipment because you just wouldn't get enough hours to run. So those, we just evaluated those with that. They're a little more expensive on the upfront cost. They cost a little less to run. They have a better heat rate, which is a way of saying how much natural gas you put in for every kilowatt hour you get out. You can put less gas in and get the same amount of kilowatt hours out. But again, higher capital cost. There are those issues. And again, until we go out for bids, we're not going to have a good, these are just based on, I'll say, the vendors talking to us, giving us a sense of what they think they would bid. Once the bid documents come out and you get those back, then you have a really good sense of what those numbers look like. The CTs with the SCR, I think that addition just doesn't get you enough flexibility. You're only going to run these about 25% of the time anyway. So to go from that to 100% doesn't justify an extra $80 million on a project like this. I mean, it starts to add up after a while. So, all right. So I compared these were numbers HDR put together, and I looked at them, and I ran my own numbers, and I think these are on the right track. They're pretty close. I'll say $154 a megawatt hour versus 163 in a high dispatch scenario. Now, that's not what you're going to be paying total, because this is just for the capacity. It's only going to be supplying maybe 20 to 25% of your energy. So these are still the least cost option of the ones we've looked at. I anticipate that to be the case going forward. It's more expensive than what you're paying now, but it's consistent with where the market's at, and I think it will be. These with energy market purchases will be less costly than going out and buying capacity right now. The capacity market is very expensive. You all are paying, I'll just say $3 a kW a month. I just talked to a guy, when was that? Thursday. And he said that they just signed a capacity deal for $8.50 a kW a month. So more than almost triple what you're paying for your capacity. And it's only going to get worse. The SPP recently raised their penalty rate. The penalty rate is, if you're short of capacity going into a season, about $7.25 a kW a month. They went up to $12 a kW a month. So that's going to kind of provide the upper limit of what you might expect to pay. These units are going to be much better, and they provide you that energy hedge that you don't get when you buy capacity only in the market.
Question.
Yes.
You said this is more than what we're paying right now.
Yes. Yes.
But won't be more than what we're probably going to be faced with in 2030.
If you didn't do this, I think the option of going to the market right now would be more expensive than these. And I ran some numbers for Tobias back in the fall and showed, hey, these are more than what you're paying now, but they're not 30% higher. And I just did an RFP for another city. They got a better deal than you. Sorry about that. 3 years ago, 5 years ago, but they just got terminated. And their agreement ended. Their costs went up about 60%. I think with these options that we're looking at here, you're not going to go up 60%. I mean, that's just, they hit a really sweet spot in the market when they went out. I think you guys got a really good deal too, don't get me wrong, but also where they're located, they don't have any natural gas in town, so they couldn't even build one of these units if they wanted to. So we've identified some of the priorities here. SPP has a concept called accredited capacity. In the case of Beatrice, you need about 50 megawatts of accredited capacity to meet, I see that I did the math right, yes, around 50 megawatts to meet your needs in the summer and a little bit more in the winter. So that's your peak demand plus a margin to basically handle outages across the system. What we're looking at with these projects, they would be dual fuel units. That means they can run either on natural gas or on diesel fuel. You'd have fuel on site. Think about back in February of 2021 when we had that really cold snap. And the biggest issue with the reliability in the region was lack of supply of natural gas. Gas supply across the country dropped about 25% because of all the power outages in Texas. And energy prices go up. You know what happened on your financials. I don't have to remind you of that. Having fuel oil on site, rather than paying $2,000 a megawatt hour, you may be paying $250. So you're going to cut that cost. You're not going to run on oil very much, but when you need it, it's going to be there. And SPP's rules on accredited capacity, they will look at how available your generator is during the coldest hours of the winter. And if you're not available, you're going to get penalized. So you may have 50 megawatts sitting there, but they'll only say you can only count 45 of it towards what you need. So then you're short. We think this approach with the oil, yes, there's money sitting in a tank, but it's money that you don't have to spend if you get a cold snap and gas gets interrupted. So it's a flexible resource. The RICE units can be online in less than 10 minutes. which makes them available to supply short, what they call supplemental reserves. You have to have, every utility has to buy a certain amount of supplemental reserve and have a certain amount of spinning reserves. Spinning is generators that are running that aren't loaded. Supplemental are generators you can start in 10 minutes and start to provide energy. These are capable, the RICE units are for sure capable of starting in less than 10 minutes. CTs, it's close, but I would say these are both very flexible, very short start time. They're going to get dispatched by SPP, and you're going to get some revenue from those ancillary ancillary services is what they call that. Cost considerations, I've already talked about all this, so I'm going to skip it. I will say that additional partners, which I think you'll need if you're going to make this a larger project, adds complexity, but it's not insurmountable. I've worked with jointly owned units over in Hastings. I've worked with Nebraska City 2 with some of the owners there. It's a process that you just have to go through, but everybody benefits at the end of the day because you're not building 4 different 50 megawatt projects. You're building a single project that everybody can benefit from. And these are challenges that you're going to have just because of the nature of your utility. You don't own any generation, so you'll be starting from scratch in terms of hiring plant staff. The manufacturers of the equipment typically will sign an O&M agreement to come in and do major maintenance on the units for a number of years. So you won't have to supply that, but you will need to have operators. You will have to have maintenance crews that are available. I would say that you're probably looking at, the plant would probably employ 6 to 10 people, depending on which site you went and how often how you wanted to staff the unit, the generation. So that's something that would have to be considered. They might be city employees. They might be hired by like I say, a joint ownership group. Gas supply is always an issue with these projects. You're in a great position. You have a pipeline that crosses the property, and then you have the northern pipeline on the east side of the airport. And either one of those is capable of supplying the needs that you would have here. Clearly, the one across the property would be the preferable one. But we do have that option to build over to northern if it was necessary. The biggest challenge right now with these projects is just the lead time of the equipment. If you don't start now, you're not going to have generation until when you need it in 2031. So we have a comfortable schedule. I don't think it's aggressive, but you need to start now. And when I say start now, start the process of bringing in partners and getting commitments and getting this, and while that's occurring, start to work on the bid specs with HDR so that they can get that on the street so that you know what we're looking at. And I just said that first one. I'm sorry, I get ahead of myself sometimes. So I'll say that there's probably the 3 most important things are getting the partners on board, getting the bid specs done and out, and then starting in the fall of 2026, you will need to submit what's called an interconnection request to SPP. SPP, Nebraska Public Power District is a member of SPP. They control the transmission lines. NPPD owns them, but SPP is the transmission operator. And so they control who can connect to those lines. They study, they see what the issues are. And you'll need to submit a request to them in order to get this project interconnected. We've already studied what it would take, what we think the issues are, and we're comfortable that interconnecting there can be done at not too high of a cost, but you still have to study it. And that process would need to occur starting in October, and before you can do that, you have to know what the turbines are, or the equipment is, whether it's a turbine or a RICE unit.
How long does that take?
The interconnection studies, SPP is making some changes to the way they do those. They'll take, from the time we request, we'll know the cost most likely up front if they're making some changes in this, and I don't want to bore you with details. It'll take about 15 months before that study work is completed. You should have an answer on the cost, though, by mid-2027, I would say. So when we look at, next slide, please. Thank you. So there's a couple different ways if we want that economy of scale. the city could own it. And OPPD, when they built Nebraska City 2, which is a 600 megawatt coal unit, they said, we're going to build it, we're going to own it, you want to be a participant, we're going to send you a bill every month and take it or leave it. And it really wasn't take it or leave it. They negotiated better terms than that. But nonetheless, OPPD owns that unit, and everybody else just buys power from it. You could structure it that way. The city could own it. That there are project participants that we've been talking to that would not prefer that kind of an arrangement. They would prefer to either, have the equity in the unit itself or have the equity in a standalone entity that owns it. I think you'd feel the same way if the shoe was on the other foot. Each of these structures has an advantage or disadvantage, but you could own it, or we could sell joint ownership units. But the folks I've talked to have a tendency to want to have like a standalone entity own this project and have that entity issue bonds and sign in agreements with the city or whoever they're going to have with operating this project. They have one problem with joint ownership where everybody has their own little equity is everybody has to issue their own bonds. And we're talking about $400 million worth of bonds. And when municipal government, yes, they're revenue bonds issued by the utilities, so they're not GO bonds. You don't have to go to a vote, but they're still an obligation to the city. And yes, it will be an obligation of the city to pay the joint ownership unit, but it doesn't show up on your financial statements as a liability. It'll be an obligation, but not this big loan on your system or on your financials. So I think based on the conversations I've had with folks, once we get the group together that is interested, it'd be my recommendation to form what's called an interlocal agreement. I know you have those probably with other functions that you do. And that interlocal agreement would basically have the same powers as any of the members. So if the city was a member through the Board of Public Works, they have the ability to issue bonds to fund the electric system, to agree to pay revenue bonds, to build the generation, to do all those things. And that interlocal then would own the project, probably either buy the land from the city or rent it from the city. And then if there's staffing that the city provides to the project, they would get reimbursed for that from the interlocal. And then that interlocal then would issue the bonds for the project. My most recent experience working on this was with the Wayland Energy Center 2 project in Hastings, Nebraska. That was a 220 megawatt coal unit that went online in 2012, and it's an interlocal called the Public Power Generation Agency, 7 owners. South Dakota has 1 member, and then the other 6 are in Nebraska. And it issued the bonds. It has its own financial reports, and it does all that for that project. Has an agreement with the city of Hastings to run the unit since it's on their site, and pays them for operating and maintenance and all that. So I think that would be my preference. I think in talking to particularly Grand Island, who's part of that PPGA, I think they were very strongly in favor of that kind of an approach. And I think it would be best for the city to, create the standalone entity so it's not on your financials and on your books. Does that make sense what I'm talking about there? Yes, sir.
Those are revenue bonds, right, Tobias?
Yes.
And they sell rather quickly.
We've not had problems with those in the past selling, no.
So as we go with the partners and we've got to do our own bonds, is there going to have to be some kind of coordination when they put those on the market?
I can explain what we did with PPGA back, and this is like 2008, but they hired their own financial advisor who looked at the various financing options, worked with bond counsel to write the documents. This is a big issue. Tobias is probably going to go to New York City and talk to the rating agencies about the project, and it is a big deal. $400 million of bonds possibly, but they would issue the bonds, and then they would become obligations of each of the participants through the PPA, a purchase power agreement, and that's how that would work. So
the next thing then, when we're talking about the partners and their ability to use the capacity, so we also have the potential of having wholesale customers besides the conglomerate that we put together.
That's correct, yes. I mean, and what will most likely happen with this project is it'll go into the Southwest Power Pool Integrated Marketplace, and they will control when it runs. Prices are high, you make money. When prices are low, you don't run the unit. But to the extent you have excess capacity, let's say you're planning on load growth that isn't there, yes, you could sell that capacity to third parties if you needed to.
And we'll always have the ability to add on to what we've built.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. Yes, this particular site could accommodate probably, if we went with CTs, probably 3 or 4 more for sure on the site. So yeah, if there were more folks that wanted to participate later on, it's very easy to add on to the project. So would you agree with that? I mean, that you've been in the meetings, so.
Yeah, the way HDR's kind of laid it out to start with, yes.
Yeah, so.
And we have enough room on site.
Yes.
And stealing from Ted, because he always says people listen in the audience. Just want to make the point that these are revenue bonds, which does not
Correct.
obligate the city from taxpayers and those type of things. It
What?
will come from the revenue that we generate from the power plant in order to pay it off. And that's, I think, a significant piece that we have to make sure that people understand.
Yes, no tax. I mean, this is the electric enterprise, or through the Board of Public Works. It's their obligation, and it's solely rates, electric rates, that would be the obligation.
Well, and the question, John, that I was going to ask when you went flying past there was,
Okay.
there was a city that had a contract, and the contract was called, and they weren't prepared, and you said they were facing a 60% increase in cost.
Yes.
They have no choice, if they've not planned ahead, to pass that on to the consumer.
They've got a couple. They were given 2 years' notice, so there's a little bit of time there. But you're right. I mean, it's now. I will say the one good thing they did, and when they got the big reduction in their power costs 4 years ago, they didn't lower rates. They took that money and invested. They rebuilt feeders. They invested it in their system, and so now they have a practically new distribution system, and they're going to have to raise rates some, but not to the extent that they would have otherwise. So that they knew they had a sweetheart deal, and I think that they knew probably 2 years ago this was coming, and had kind of braced for it, I'll say.
Well, and so everybody also understands, this increase in capacity percentage that's come down the line from the SPP has kind of caught everybody off guard.
Yes. I would say that 2 events have driven it. The first was February 2021, when they had the rolling blackouts. They made a real emphasis on resource adequacy, is what they call it, and that they raised the planning reserve margin, and so everybody had to build more capacity. But probably the bigger driver is data centers, AI, Google data centers, all those things that are coming down. That Google project up in Lincoln is ballpark 10 times the city of Beatrice's entire load. There are data centers on the drawing boards that are 1,000 megawatts. That's 25 times what the city of Beatrice uses on your coldest day of the year. And they use that much power almost every single hour of the year. And they would take, like these combustion turbine units that we're looking at, they would take 20 of them, and these entities have so much money that Google, they can write a check for $2 billion and buy all that capacity, and that's what they're starting to do. That's probably the bigger driver of the shortfall or the higher capacity prices right now. So I think in terms of next steps, what I talked about with Tobias, and he can say maybe what he's looking for from you all, but in general, we want the city council to be aware of what we're talking about, be in general agreement with taking this approach for the project. Give Tobias the authorization to start working with participants, provide more firm information. We've already been talking to them, but we haven't said, hey, this is the deal. This is what we're looking at. once we get that interest lined up, then finalize, start working towards creating an interlocal and creating a PPA between the interlocal and the participants that would enable the city, enable the interlocal to issue bid documents for the generation and to commence the process of starting to look at financing and figuring out how to issue bonds and to pay for the project. So, and those are all things that I will be able to help with in some capacity. There will be other experts. Clearly, HDR is going to take the lead on the engineering and getting the bid documents put together. But in terms of helping to structure the financing and the ownership agreements and finding legal counsel to draft those agreements, I'll be available to help you with that process. So, all right. Did I miss anything, Tobias?
No.
Okay. So I appreciate your time. I think this is an exciting project. I mean, I don't get all excited usually when I talk about it, but this is a big deal to the city. And it enables you to control your destiny. You're not relying on the market. You're not relying on the goodwill of SPP. You're not relying on somebody giving you a sweetheart deal. You're putting in the project that will give you the lowest cost of looking at things right now, and will basically give you an asset that's going to serve the city for 30, 40 years into the future. So I don't get excited usually talking about, and power plants aren't exciting, but
Depends on who you are.
this is an important project. This is a big deal to the city, and I think it's a great step towards your energy future. So, any other questions for me? Yeah.
No questions, but I think it's important that, and we all know how important this is to our community. One of the most consequential things I think projects we've ever undertaken, isn't it? By far. There's nothing even compares to it. But the real threat is what if we don't do it? I think we all know the consequences. And if we don't, we need to study some more. So as the public asks us questions as we move on from tonight, we've got to make sure we give them the true facts, not an opinion that we have as individuals, but the real facts, so we don't undersell what we're trying to do. And I think it's a good project, and I hope we prove that tonight. Thank you.
And Gary, just to answer your question maybe a little bit more, I think this council has taken a look at a number of things that will set up this community for 70 to 100 years. We did fresh water, went on a limb and made sure that is protected with the wellhead protection. We built a landfill that's now going to last at least 70 years. I think this is the trifecta that will really just protect, not my generation, because I'm not going to be around, but generations that are not even born. So we're going to be able to protect them as well. And I think that's just a great place to be over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So that's all I got to say.
No, and I think that's a great analogy that you just made. It's not you that's going to benefit. And I think back to the early projects I worked on in my career when I was in my early 30s, some generation projects back then that, now it's my children that are in their 20s that, they're going to be able to take advantage of those projects going forward. And that's a great way of looking at it right there.
I also just want to say thank you. There's a lot of things that kind of came together between Tobias and Pat Feist and you and the property that we purchased. Mm-hmm. I know there's a lot of people that want HDR to do work for them, but thank you also for plowing ahead and I think being really a forward thinker from all three of you guys that was able to get HDR, because I think if you look at what's happening in the next 10 years, in the next 2 years, you're not going to find a lot of companies that are going to take on how to build a power plant. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
Yeah, it's the next challenge is going to be getting the EPC contractor or whatever contract form we use. Those guys are busy too. The people that are doing the construction, but we'll get there. And we've got a comfortable schedule. We have the team at HDR that's going to guide us through that from the technical standpoint, and I feel really good about the project.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you. Glad to be here. And I'll be working with Tobias. Just one more thing on the next steps, since nobody pounded their fist on the table and said no. I've been in contact with several potential participants. We were hoping to get meetings set up this week, but my schedule got away from me. Probably over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'd like to set up meetings with the ones that have expressed strong interest have the meeting on site, give them an opportunity to go look at what we're looking at go to the site where it's going to be built, go through the numbers, go through the schedule and the commitment process. So we're going to be doing that over, like I said, probably the next 2 to 3 weeks. A lot of what they're going to see is what I shared with you tonight, but then we'll provide a little more technical detail because a lot of those people have engineers that like to get down into the nitty gritty. Just so, thank you very much. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Bob. So I just a couple of quick comments here. I think it's important that we support this. The easy vote would be no. We could just continue to buy off the market, but capacity is obviously paramount. And this is the difference between renting or owning. And everybody that's ever rented someplace and owned someplace, you know what your costs are on both. You can't control rent. So that's in simple terms. But the capacity part of it, it came to me this week. We toured the underground water reservoir that the city has at 4th and Grant. And they built it in 65 to 66, and it holds 5 million gallons of water. I talked to Tobias about what he thought that would cost if we had to build that today. Can't imagine what it would be. Thank goodness that somebody that set in all these seats in 1965 had the forethought to put that in place so we didn't have to do that now. We're not draining 5 million gallons of water out of that every single day, but it's there when we need it. And that's what this is. It's there when we need it. So I would urge everybody here to vote for it. The only other comment that I've got, Bob, is Pat's sitting here. I want to know if he has something he'd like to say.
John's pretty much covered. Points. Better than I would. If you have any direct questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Let's think about that. Let's first move into the resolution,
Okay.
because I think that's where, if there's any more discussion, we can take care of that. So basically, resolution number 7727, committing to pursuing the next steps in the construction of the natural gas-fired electric generation facility.
I move the resolution number 7727 be passed and adopted.
Second.
Okay, before I call on the public, is there any more discussion up here?
I was just thinking a little bit for economic development for the future, how great this would be for the city. As you look for development and companies wanting to come here and build and have reliable power is, I think, very important for us in the future.
I tell you from personal experience, I can see where rates are going. My wife and I are fortunate enough to have a 786 square foot single bed condo at Table Rock Lake. I just got a notice that we're going to go up 4%, and they didn't tell me when the next 4% was, but they said over the next 5 years, expect things to go up over and over and over. And I think I read between the lines that it's going to go 4% this right now and probably 4% again in August or September. So, White Rivers, I noticed, is connected to the Southwest Power Pool, but not necessarily a member. So I wasn't quite sure what that is, but I'll sure find out. So it's not just Nebraska. It is happening in a lot of places. From the public, anybody have any comments? Mr. Nelson.
James Nelson, 1025 North 6th Street, Beatrice.
Excuse me, Jim. Did you move into town?
That's my office address.
So, but your real address, your address where you live, you don't live in Beatrice.
430 East Hickory, inside your zoning limit, and I get service from BPW.
Okay. You've been here several times and always used that address, and I wondered if you moved into town, that's all.
No, that's the office address, Ted.
Okay.
I have one question on this.
Sure.
What's the cost? What so far has the city paid to get this project to where we're at today? And what's the anticipated cost to get it to the next level?
Okay.
See, to date, we would have done the study with Burns and Mack, and we did the study with HDR. Between the two of them, we've probably 200 to 250. Does that sound about right, John? And then obviously going forward depends on the size of the project and what partners you bring in. I think John indicated earlier, it could be upwards of 400 million, depending if you want the largest size.
That's to build it.
Yep.
But so far you've spent $200,000 to $250,000. to get an opinion of, yeah, it looks like a good idea. What's it going to cost for the next step of, yeah, let's go ahead and let's have drawings drawn up to set it out for bids?
That is what we're asking for tonight, so we can go forward, ask and contact HDR to put the plans and specs together for the next round of bids that we need, to go talk to attorneys and see what it's going to take to put documents together. That's what we're asking for permission tonight on.
Okay, so you don't know what that cost might be yet?
Nope, don't know yet.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not,
I've got one more question.
okay.
So you don't get a vote.
What's that?
You don't get to vote.
I know I don't.
And I've reminded you that
I
over
know.
the years. Not always, you don't always appreciate that, but if you were going to vote on this tonight,
Yep.
how would you vote?
Oh, I would vote yes.
Okay.
As I said, to me, this is the third step to make sure that kids that aren't even born that want to live in the city of Beatrice will have electricity at a fair rate. Not only that, it makes business sense. And
Okay.
So, yeah, I would vote yes, but you're right. Unless things are really weird, I don't get a vote.
I wanted to give you an opportunity to voice your opinion, that's all.
I think it's interesting because I always believe you hire experts for a reason. So we hired an expert, and he says we should go forward. So unless we want to say, oh, no, we don't trust you, which none of us do, we need to go forward.
And Jim, to answer your question, one of the things that I've said publicly that somewhat drive me crazy, to get a lot of these projects done, this is how you have to do it. And you're going to have to go through HDR, and you're going to have to go through somebody that can tell you how to put whatever the engineering group that will put it together, and you're going to have to charge, I don't know, I'm guessing architecturally 8 to 10% will be their fee, maybe a little less or a little more, depending. You build a building today, you got to figure 8% of that's going to go in, and then you've got another host of, Terracom's going to come in, and they're going to check how the soil is, so you've got a percentage there. Unfortunately, that is the way we have to do it to get things done. So I don't know if that answers your question better, but there's not any other way to get it done.
Mayor, I appreciate that, but having the public know what's been spent and what is anticipated to be spent, just to determine whether you're going to proceed with the project.
Okay, point taken. Okay, your vote, please. And that passes 7-0. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to public hearings and bids. Public hearing is for the purpose of considering adoption of plan modification 26-1 to the redevelopment plan for redevelopment area number 2, Stoddard Place II, an LIHTC redevelopment project.
Yes, this is for the TIF project for Hoppy Development, which is soon to be the owner of the south half of Stoddard School site, right? We have a signed contract. They haven't taken ownership of it yet because they have to get all of their grant agreements put in place. But they have made the application here for TIF. There are 2 hearings here. One is for their LIHTC project, and one is for their market rate or workforce housing project. It's one development. So most of what we talked about probably talked about here in one hearing, but there are 2 separate projects. Again, south half of Stoddard School site, what they're looking at building are 38 units. 33 of those units would be for low income, 5 would be market rate. If you're asking what those units will look like, they sent me a couple different proposals, but the easiest way is if you've driven on Highway 77 north through Lincoln, you get to about Pioneer Boulevard, and you look off to the west, those row houses, if you will, it's that style is kind of what they're looking at. I don't believe they're peach. Peach ones are their apartment buildings. That's not what they're looking at building. I think it's the ones a little farther to the west, but we haven't seen exact blueprints of the sites yet. So that's kind of what they're looking at. These 2 projects would be at $616,000 in TIF revenue over 15 years. You're going to ask what low income is. The closest I could find was looking at one of their sites in Lincoln that qualifies for LIHTC. Low income was $45,000 per year for a single person, or $64,000 for a family of 4. Now, the median household income in Gage County is $67,000. So that is the project they're looking at. Again, we've seen a couple of site plans. We've not had an opportunity to kind of go through those yet. They haven't been defined. So our utilities guys can look at them. So nothing set in stone, but about 38 units is what they're looking at.
Discussion. From the public? All right, we'll close the hearing.
I move the public hearing be closed at 6:50 PM.
Second.
Your vote, please. And that passes 7-0. We'll move on and open up the next public hearing, which is public hearing for the purpose of considering adoption of Plan Modification 26-2 to the redevelopment plan for redevelopment area number 2, Stoddard Place II, Workforce Housing Redevelopment Project.
Same project we just talked about. This is for the workforce housing side, or the 5 units that would be the market rate. A couple things we're waiting on. We're waiting on some final numbers from the county assessor's office so we can put the final details on this project. But everything is pretty close to what we talked about, that $616,000 in TIF revenue.
We'll still see discussion up here from the public. Okay, let's close the hearing.
I move the public hearing be closed at 6:51 PM.
Second.
Your vote, please. That passes 7-0. The last public hearing for tonight is a public hearing for purpose of considering the rezoning of a tract of land located on part of the northeast quarter of Section 29, Township 4, North, Range 6, east of the 6th PM, City of the Beatrice, Gage County, Nebraska, parcel number 004342100, from agricultural district to general industrial.
This is a parcel of ground that's 10.01 acres that is just west of the city limits and just west of the industrial park. So if you're in the industrial park, you take Sargent Road till it dead ends at Southwest 32nd Street. It is just across the street on Southwest 32nd Street. The owner of this, Armstrong Rentals LLC, has applied for the rezone from ag to general industrial. It's, again, adjacent to a general industrial just to the east of there. Planning and zoning heard it tonight. They made a recommendation for it, and so it's before you tonight.
Do we need any discussion up here? Seeing none? From the public? Seeing none, let's close the hearing.
I move the public hearing be closed at 6:52 PM.
Second.
Your vote, please. And that passes 7-0. Okay, we have a couple of resolutions. Resolution number 7728, adopting Plan Modification 26-1 to the redevelopment plan for redevelopment area number 2, Stoddard Place II, the LIHTC redevelopment project.
I move the resolution number 7728 be passed and adopted.
Second.
Any discussion needed here or from the public? Your vote, please. That passes 7-0. Move on to resolution number 7729, adopting Plan Modification 26-2 to the redevelopment plan for redevelopment area number 2, Stoddard Place II, Workforce Housing Redevelopment Project.
I move the resolution number 7729 be passed and adopted.
Second.
Any discussion needed up here or from the public? I guess the only thing I would say is I know sometimes the community gets a little bit confused with the word workforce housing. It is really market rate, which means it has whatever the rent will bear versus the low income term that was used that we really can't use today, but I just did. So, your vote, please. And that passed 7-1.
7-0.
Or 7-0, sorry. Okay, resolution number 7730, executing the grant agreement with the United States Department of Transportation and any and all other documents necessary for the U.S. DOT to grant funds to the city for the proposed of funding the city's CAST initiative and any and all other documents necessary to implement the CAST initiative, which is also known as our downtown revitalization.
I move the resolution number 7730 be passed and adopted.
Second.
All right. So after only about 20 months, we were given the notice of award on June 26th of 2024. We received this grant agreement on Thursday. So you do the math there. If you read through it, I'm not sure why it took that long to kick this thing out. There's not much in this agreement. But notably is if you start looking at some of the timelines that are in there, it's a very condensed timeline that we have to get this project done. You'll see that final design, they have scheduled to be done by September of 2028. So just over 2 years. Yeah, Gary?
Yeah, under the terms of this agreement and the way that we went with that, things like the property acquisition and that, and the different things we have to do, the state of Nebraska is going to tell us what to do with that, right?
Correct. In this agreement, the State of Nebraska Department of Transportation is the administrator of the grant. They'll work closely with the feds and handle those things. Much like the trail project that went through Pioneer Trail that was on the east side of town, much like the trail project out to the homestead, they kind of take on their own life. We are involved, but yes, those things are administered by NDOT. So right-of-way acquisition, utilities, those are all in here, but construction has to be done by December 15th of 2030. So right now, what the state is looking at is to bid this project out in August of 28, so we can obligate the funds by the end of September of 28, so the work can be done by the end of December of 30.
That's a total project.
Total project.
It's going to be a push.
Yes, it will be.
Yeah, I spoke with Tobias about that today, talking about it being pushed, and he explained to me that there's 153 things that need to be done from today till the end of the project. And I said, so how far along are we? And how many do we have done?
11.
11.
Really? Wow.
11.
I wasn't expecting.
Number one,
I was
open
expecting a
file.
lower number, so I'm pretty excited about 11.
It seems staggering to me, but I'm sure it'll get done.
It's staggering, but I thought you were going to say 1.
No.
And that is the signed contract, and I thought, oh my goodness.
But Gary makes a really good point. We are kind of the passenger in the car in this deal. You know, the state is, it's the Fed money, and the state's going to do a lot of the work, and we have some say in it, but we're just kind of the passenger here.
Is that the case also on once the highway is moved and we're working on the corridor, Court Street?
Yeah, you'll have some say in it. That, I believe you'll have more say in than how the highway's rerouted.
Again, they know, they're the experts on
Right.
that. I question if they're the experts on, I don't know, the look that we want in the corridor for downtown afterwards. That's all. Again, they know the highway, and I don't question that, and they know roads. I just question whether or not.
It'd be nice to have a say in what the bump outs look like. And
Exactly,
they plan,
right, yeah,
Landscaping a little bit.
right, yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll have more say in that just based upon the other projects. I will note that on the schedule, they have environmental approval taking from June of 25 until April of 27.
Oh.
So just under 2 years to get through environmental approval on this project.
Can I do
Yeah,
Terry's?
go ahead.
So Terry, Councilman Doyle, couldn't be here tonight, and this has been his project. This is his project long before he came on the council. I can't tell you how many times he and I spoke of this. And a family obligation kept him from the meeting tonight, so he sent me a statement that he'd like me to read on his behalf, and I asked Mayor Morgan, and Bob said that works. So this is from Terry. Thank you for all your tremendous efforts, and what an exciting and historic moment for our community. For decades, Beatrice Comprehensive Development Plans have recommended these downtown developments, the improvements to the city, and seeing this vision finally moving forward is truly something to celebrate. The relocation of the Highway 136 and its heavy truck traffic away from Court Street is paramount to the safety and the well-being of our community. With this long-awaited change, we now have the incredible opportunity to renovate and redesign Court Street into a more pedestrian-friendly, a more business-friendly, and residential-friendly destination that will attract people from across the region. Congratulations to the mayor, the city administration, and my fellow council members and all the department heads for your leadership, your persistence, and your dedication to getting us to this point. This is a very big deal. It's a milestone achievement for the city of Beatrice, and now the real work begins, and I have every confidence that together we will make the most of this opportunity. I only wish I could be there this evening to celebrate alongside all of you. Thank you very much. So that was Terry's statement. Yep.
I think we have a lot to be proud of, because I believe when the information was released, this was the only large grant in Nebraska, correct? There was a
Correct.
planning grant, but this was it. So Beatrice got the slot, I guess. So it is exciting.
This is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money for us, yes.
Has the state ever done any other projects like this as far as like relocating a highway in any other communities?
Yes, I mean, it's been common practice. Think of Wahoo, right? They used to run through the downtown, they moved it outside. I mean, there's some of those
So
communities you
it's
can
not
think of.
Not unusual.
Not unusual. I don't know of a lot that have moved it just a block. I can't speak any off the top of my head that they've done that way, but moving a highway has been done before. And just to remind everybody, one of the 11 things we've got done, right, was selecting the engineer with the Department of Transportation with their assistance here. When did we do that? That was back in April of 25. We selected the engineer. We selected JEO to be the engineers on this project. So they are already on board. They already have their contract. They are very hurriedly in the background right now working on updating it. So as soon as we get this turned in, the state can sign it hopefully tomorrow, get turned back over to the feds to get them to sign it, and so JEO can get started like Monday.
And we'll be working with JEO with an amended timeline that will hopefully have a little bit of breathing room. So, from the public, any discussion? All right, your vote, please. That passes 7-0. Move on to resolution number 7731, executing a memorandum of agreement with First Star Recycling for the processing of recyclable materials generated by the city.
I move the resolution number 7731 be passed and adopted.
Second.
So First Star Recycling is who we take our recycling material to, and they have for the last 4 years. Recently, they were able to secure a grant from the state for recycling. And the reason for the grant was they did a kind of a spoken hub model, right? So the idea is you have a larger community, all the recycled material comes in there, and then they collect it from one site. And so they reached out to us to give us part of the grant that they received. And so what First Star is looking to do is give the city $95,682.85. That is enough money for us to purchase 6 new recycling trailers. Jason said he's looking at 2 cardboard-only ones and 4 mixed-use trailers. The agreement is that First Star will give us the money. In return, we say that we'll take our material to them for another 3 years. But if you read it, there's a 6-month out clause in it. But that's what the agreement's for.
No-brainer.
Any discussion up here? From the public? All right, your vote, please. That passes 7-0. Next resolution is number 7732, approving and adopting the Aquatic Master Plan developed by Waters Edge Aquatic Design for the redevelopment of the city's water park.
I move the resolution number 7732 be passed and adopted.
Second.
So last week, we had a representative here from Waters Edge, went over the water park study that was done. Tonight, we're asking you just to formally adopt the master plan they put together. It still includes all 3 proposals they had in there. There's no decision made with regards to is it a lazy river or how big it is or any of that stuff. But sometimes when we apply for grants, what they want to see is you've actually adopted the master plan. So this way, we have a document that shows that we did officially adopt the master plan. That's the reason we're asking you to vote tonight.
Discussion up here? From the public? Your vote, please. That passes 7-0. Okay. Move on to an ordinances. Ordinance amending the zoning map for the city of Beatrice, Nebraska by changing the zoning of the parcel 0043-42100 from agricultural district AG to general industrial district GI.
I move the said ordinance be given number 26-5, the title thereof be approved, the rules be suspended, and the said ordinance be read by number only 3 times tonight.
Second.
A motion to suspend the rules is not debatable, so your vote, please. And that passes 7-0. Ordinance number 26-5 the first time, 26-5 the second, and 26-5 the third and final time.
I move that ordinance number 26-5 be passed and approved.
Second.
This is just the rezoning we talked about earlier that is just west of the industrial park.
Any discussion needed here? From the public? Your vote, please. Passes 7-0. All right, that moves us to the public forum. The first public forum is for the presentation of an item by the general public to the city council for consideration at a later date. No discussion or action will be taken by the city council this time. Anyone here for the public forum?
Jim Nelson, 1025 North 6th Street is my office address. 430 East Hickory is my home address. And Mr. Fairbanks, you brought up a very good point. I don't get to vote for any of you people because I'm not in the city limits. But I'm in your zoning limits. So therefore, you make the rules and the restrictions that apply to me and my property. I also don't get to choose my electricity provider because I'm on Board of Public Works. None of us get to choose that. And likewise, I don't get to vote for the rate setters that set the rates on me. Now, there is a bill in the legislature to remedy that, and I hope that you would all support it. Now, the real reason I'm here is, and a short discussion with Mr. Estra, was your utility rates. Rates go up, I understand that. But when the public is told the rate is going up 5 or 6% or whatever you told the public, but then you added the surcharge of $3, and then everybody gets their bill, and I would like to know why my rates went up 12%. And I've given that worksheet to Dave, and I'd like an answer in the future.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the city.
Hold on. Oops. Caleb, do you want to come up and introduce yourself?
Sure.
I'm not calling him out.
Thanks, Tobias. Wasn't really ready, but sure. Caleb Fione. Oh God, what is my new address? I just moved to Beatrice, 2 weeks ago? So 1 second. 1012 North 10th Street. So I'm Caleb Fione. I'm the new, the new Engage director temporarily, and then here within hopefully the next month I'll be the, I will be, not hoping, I will be the new Gage Development Coalition director. So with all of the entities merging, we're in the process of getting some of the low-hanging fruit done, like just digital infrastructure, so new email addresses, things that aren't necessarily thought about right away. So some of that is done. So, but we're making the rounds, making sure we meet, the county supervisors. I've had a great meeting with Tobias already, and he's really taken me under his wing, getting me acquainted with Beatrice. So I appreciate you on that. So just starting to get involved in the fine workings of Beatrice and then the rest of Gage County. So I don't have a ton to present, but I'm working on getting on the agenda within the next month because we're meeting with the supervisors tomorrow, the county supervisors. A really productive committee meeting happened last Friday to talk about some tourism ideas, and one of the ideas that came out of that was an app that the constituents and the residents of Gage County can use, but also it have a tandem use of being tourism as well. So being able to utilize and leverage tourism funds to pay for the app, but then also have the added benefit of being something that you can use as a county or as a resident of the county. So I have a beta version of it kind of made, so I'll be able to present that at the next one. And my favorite part of it is it has community profiles, and it will just grab and then add things. So if you're new to town like I am, it will have your Rolodex of people you need to know. It has the phone numbers for city offices. It'd have the library if you need that. And then the really cool part is at the bottom it will have the happenings of Beatrice or Adams or Wymore and say what's going on in that town at that time. And then if you wanted to even take that one step further, you can say, hey, we have public meetings, so if you want the public to show up to things, you can serve in that interim government role as well as a tourism role. So hopefully more to show at the next meeting, so I'll make sure to get on that. But thanks for the warm welcome, Tobias.
I was just going to add, I had the pleasure of interviewing Caleb when he came down, and about an hour and a half later, he's a great young kid, a lot of great ideas. Just in our meetings yesterday, some of the thoughts he has for the future. So it's going to be exciting to have a fresh young ideas and how we develop.
Which is great that we're adding power capacity, because I'm hoping to fill it pretty quick. Well, not super quick, but we'll get there. So we might be having this discussion in another 5 years to add more. So, but yep.
And you're also involved in the state economic development, the regional economic council?
Oh, yes. I'm a board member for the Mid-America Economic Development Council that does regional economic development. So the country is split into its different regions and zones. So you have the South, you have the coasts, and you have the Midwest. Part of the issue we see with the Midwest redevelopment is the other zones see the Midwest as flyover country. And the goal of the region is to basically tell them, well, we know your bread's buttered and it's the Midwest and the Midwest is the best. So this is where redevelopment needs to happen. This is where economic development should happen. And we're not those flyover states that you think we are. So there's a good push in economic regional policy to make the leaders really be the Midwest because we've got the grit and tenacity to roll up our sleeves and do the work. So that's a big part of it. As Mike mentioned, I'm also on a couple state committees. I'm a member of the Nebraska Economic Developers Association, working as the interim chair of the education committee. So how do we educate the next round of economic developers? So that's a wonderful thing that I get to do. And then I'm a member of I'm advisory board member of the United States Global Leadership Coalition. So we meet once a year in DC, and one of the really cool benefits is we get to see what international trade looks like to the country, but then it gets broken down to how does international trade affect the state. And so when we have those conversations with big manufacturers and say, are you going to be exporting? Are you going to be importing? Part of that gets factored into that trade piece. So it's really cool that we could then not just champion, hey, you need to do business in Nebraska. Then we can localize it a little more and say, have you thought about Gage County, Nebraska, specifically for your development and your import and export needs? So that's a really cool piece to have. And then just the added benefit of being with our congressional delegation in DC, in their offices, and then being able to provide a list of needs that our communities need. So something that Tobias and I have already talked about is when we're there, if you have a list of things that Beatrice really needs to have on the radar, we can definitely pass that along with our congressional members and make sure that they're aware of what we're doing here in Gage County. So
Welcome,
So,
and thank you for being here.
yep. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Thank you, Council. I appreciate you, and I'm sure I'll be back, and you'll definitely cut my mic off from then. So that's your warning.
All right. City Administrator's Monthly Report.
Yeah, again, hopefully everybody had a chance to look through it. A couple of the highlights that are in there. Tree inventory is currently ongoing, so JEO is down as part of the grant. They were going to inventory all the trees on the city right-of-way east of Highway 77. They came back and said it's going faster than they thought. They could do west of Highway 77 for just a couple more bucks. All fits in the grant, so we have them go ahead and continue to do their work on that side of things. With the nice weather, if you drove by, we did see some concrete get poured at Heritage Heights. Also at Crest First Edition, which is the apartments out there at 25th and Scott Street area. They poured some concrete today, and so those projects continue to move along. They've poured the foundation for their next building, and their first two buildings are full.
Really?
Yeah, so good for them. Things are going well there. And then a lot of time's been spent by staff right now doing some plan reviews. So Beatrice Commons, they're getting ready to get kicked off here and get started. So Landmark Snacks has been coming through. SEC's got an addition going on there. And so a lot of staff time's been taken up reviewing those documents, getting things ready for construction here as soon as can't say the weather breaks, right? It's been too beautiful to say that, but as soon as they're ready to go and get started.
Yeah, I walked Heritage Heights on Friday when they were pouring and talked to Bob Tiemann, and he thought they would be done this week. It looked to me, what I know, concrete, but it looked to me to be 90% to 95% done. They had a little bit of the cul-de-sac to do and the aprons to Lincoln and to Grant, and then a little bit of stretch that will be 20th Street. But gosh, it looks good. Mm-hmm. It really looks good. It's going to be a wonderful addition to the community.
Yeah.
You put your initials in?
I have tried to talk my wife into buying a lot and building, but she said, I like it here. So.
Any other questions? If not, I guess the only observation I will say is things are going to be busy between now and December 31st of 2030.
Yeah.
So there are 2 major projects that we'll be moving forward on. Will there be some heartburn? Yeah. But you know what? I think as we try to make that push to grow, that magic number of 15,000, we've done enough projects to kind of really spur ahead to get there. So with that, the next regular city council meeting is March 2nd, 6 p.m. right here. Mr. McLean,
I move the meeting be adjourned at 7:15 PM.
Second.
your vote, please. All right, everybody have a good night.